A question I'm often asked is, do you have to fund a living trust? This is especially important because a trust only covers what's placed inside of it. That's what funding is all about. Through this video, you'll learn what it means to fund a trust. You'll understand why funding is not only necessary, but essential if you hope for your trust to work. You'll learn the benefits of a properly executed revocable living trust. I'll show you what controls assets within a living trust. You'll have a good understanding of the funding process and what's involved in getting it all done. Okay, when it comes to a revocable living trust, the primary objective is to facilitate our estate plan. Now, when I say an estate plan, quite simply, that's a plan for how your estate will be distributed to your heirs and beneficiaries whenever you die. Now, a lot of times people think that that's something they don't need to think about right now, or they think, you know what, maybe I don't need a very complex estate plan because I don't have a very complex estate. Well, let me first of all tell you, you do have an estate because we all have an estate. And because you have an estate, you need a plan for that estate. If you don't have a plan, the government has a plan for you. That's through their laws of intestate succession, where they outline exactly how your assets will be distributed if you don't have a plan for how that's going to take place whenever you pass away. So you've got to have a plan for the estate. A revocable living trust can be a great way to do that. Now, the primary objective and the primary benefit are two different things. I said the primary objective of the revocable living trust is that we want to facilitate our estate plan. But the primary benefit of doing that through a revocable living trust is so that we avoid the probate process. Now, you may have heard about probate, or perhaps you haven't heard about probate, but you're going to hear about it right now. When we talk about probate, one of the things that you need to understand is that probate is basically a process set up by the government. Now, for many people, they hear that and they say, hey, that's all I need to know. I got to get out of this. Well, I can understand that sentiment, but let's take a look at a little further definition. Probate is a process set up by the government for the orderly distribution of assets upon death. Now, I got to tell you, at first glance, when I hear that more thorough definition, it doesn't sound so bad. You see, I think there should be a process set up for the orderly distribution of assets upon death. The challenge is with three words there: by the government. You see, I don't know that I want the government to be in charge of how my assets are distributed. Well, I don't want them to be involved at all, so I'd rather just avoid the probate process altogether. Well, in order to do that, we need to have a plan. That plan involves having a revocable living trust. Now, one of the great things about a revocable living trust is that it enables us to put restrictions on the use of the money that's been placed into that trust, so that whenever we leave that behind after we've passed away, the money is held in trust and can be distributed to our heirs and beneficiaries subject to the terms that we've laid out in the trust agreement. Now, we may have terms that say perhaps they don't get the money until maybe certain events have occurred, such as until they get X amount once they graduate from college. They get a certain amount for the purchase of their home. They get a certain amount if they would like to start a business. You see, these are things that we can basically exercise control even from the grave. I've got a lot of clients that love the sound of that because they say, hey, you know what, I made this money. I don't want to just give it to my kids or my grandkids and just have them squander it all. You know, I worked hard, I sacrificed, I did, a lot of things that I didn't necessarily want to do, but I knew I had to do them if I wanted to provide for my family. But they don't want to provide for their family just so that the family doesn't have to work, or so that the family can be trust fund babies and basically live off the efforts of a parent, grandparent, or somebody else. No, they want to pass on things and to pass it on in a way that continues that legacy. Well, a trust is a great way of doing that. Now, the way that we outline how the trust is going to do that is through the trust agreement. Now, in the trust agreement, basically, it's going to lay out, what assets are going to whom, how they're going. We can put a distribution schedule in place that maybe, our heirs and beneficiaries, depending upon their age, they can get it, maybe a third at 21, a third at 25, a third at 30. Or sometimes people say, well, you know what, I don't know how old they'll be whenever I pass away, but I do like the spread out nature of a distribution schedule. So maybe they'll say they get a third at the time of my death, a third 5 years after that, or however many years you want it to be, and then maybe the final third, however long you'd like after that. So there's kind of a staggered effect. One of the benefits here is that rather than getting a lump sum all at once, it provides for a little bit of additional restriction so that maybe they have to demonstrate a certain financial competence, a certain financial responsibility, so that they're showing that they know that this is important, they take it seriously, and they have a trustee that's going to be kind of guiding that process. That's going to be an important part of your revocable trust. Now, the only way that this happens is if the trust is funded. So to answer that question, do we have to fund that trust? Absolutely. Now, this is important information that we're going to talk about through the rest of this video, but before we do that, I want to make sure that you take some time to like and subscribe to this channel, because we cover a lot of vitally important information that you need to know about, and you can gain access to it when you like or subscribe. So do that right now. Okay, so it's incredibly important. You know, I said it's not only necessary, I said it's essential that we fund the trust. But what does that mean? You know, a lot of times people think funding something, maybe if I were to fund a business, that means that I have to invest money into that business. Well, when we're talking about funding our trust, it means we're transferring assets into that trust. That could be money in the form of maybe bank accounts, it could be investment accounts, it can be stock market accounts, it can be whatever type of accounts, but it's also more than that. It's transferring assets. Now, whether those assets be real estate, real property, or if those assets may be business interests, such as our ownership in an LLC or in a corporation or an S corporation, it could be essentially, the transfer of personal property, such as our furnishings, any jewelry we have, maybe firearms. All of these things have to be transferred into the trust in order for them to be covered by the trust. That's why, yes, you do need to fund your revocable living trust. Here's how to do it. It depends on what asset we're talking about. You see, different assets require different treatment. For some assets, it's as simple as drafting a piece of paper and getting that paper executed and including that internally. For other assets, we've got to do things from a government level. We've got to actually have a title transferred out of our personal name into the name of the trust. Well, that's going to be for things such as your personal residence. Maybe if you have a second home, a vacation home, if you have any rental real estate. Now, when it comes to funding the trust with rental real estate, typically you have to understand that we're doing more than just planning our estate. We also have to protect our assets so that we have an estate to carry on to our heirs and beneficiaries. Lawsuits are running rampant in this society, so we've got to protect against those lawsuits. One way to do that is through a limited liability company. If we transfer rental properties into our limited liability company, we get asset protection that way. That asset protection is a great benefit, but we haven't taken care of the estate plan until we transfer that LLC into the trust. The way that we do that is through documentation. In particular, we draft what's called an assignment of limited liability company interest. So now you are transferring your ownership of those units of ownership in the LLC out of your personal name over into the name of the trust. It's not difficult, but it is different. So you've got to make sure that that's done. Additionally, for any bank accounts, we always draft transfer letters. We'll prepare transfer letters for our clients that they take into the financial institution that advises the financial institution that they have recently set up a revocable living trust for their estate planning, and as such, they need to transfer the title in that account out of their personal name into the name of the trust. Now, let me give you a quick caveat here. One of the things that people often mistakenly do is they go to the bank and they say, I need to set up a trust account. Or they'll say, I need to set up an account for my trust. These are different things than transferring the title of your account. See, what we're doing, we're not changing the account. We're maintaining that account. We're just changing the title in the account out of our personal name to the name of the trust. This can be much easier because that's all we're trying to do. When you go in and you ask the bank to open a trust account for you or open an account for your trust, they're going to ask you questions that you don't know the answer to. Part of the reason you don't know the answer to is that there is no answer. And let me explain what I mean there. I have clients all the time that will go into a bank, they say I need to open an account for my trust, so the bank officer will say, great, I need your trust identification number. Well, the type of trust that we're talking about is a revocable living trust that is set up for estate planning purposes. As such, with it being a grantor trust, this is going to be utilizing your personal Social Security number for all trust purposes. There is not a separate identification number for that trust. As such, it does not need a separate trust account. It's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when it comes to the funding process, and I wanted to share that information with you so you don't make that mistake. We cover a lot of great information in these videos on YouTube, but I want to do something a little bit more for you. I've put together a mini course that I call Enlightened Estate Planning, and I want to make that available to you today, and I'm going to do something even better. I'm going to make it available to you absolutely free of charge. That's right, you pay nothing for this. All you have to do is click the link below to access this Enlightened Estate Planning course, where you will have access to incredible information, these valuable strategies for protecting yourself, your assets, and your family. Once again, that course is offered for you free of charge. All you have to do is click the link below to access it. Do that whenever you get a chance because you need this information. I look forward to seeing you in our next video. I'm JJ Childers. Thanks for watching.